So on Saturday night, Josh Taylor lost for the third time in a row in that unanimous decision loss to Ekow Essuman in what was Taylor's welterweight debut. And now pretty much everyone and their mother are saying that Josh Taylor ought to be retiring now. Josh Taylor's last win was over Jack Catterall in the two men's first fight against each other in early 2022, and a lot of people had Jack Catterall winning that fight. So if you think Catterall did win that first fight, you could almost say that Josh Taylor is on a 4-fight skid, and would have therefore been on a 3-fight skid going into this Ekow Essuman fight. But what can't be denied is that Josh Taylor was coming off of 3 subpar performances going into the Essuman fight. Catterall 1, Teofimo Lopez, and Catterall 2. But those 3 underwhelming performances that made Josh Taylor look past his best could have been attributed to the fact that he was struggling to make the super lightweight limit. But now that he's just made his welterweight debut, a weight that he's meant to be more healthy and feels better at, against a domestic or European level fighter, a man who Taylor came in as a big favourite against, Taylor did fade as the fight went on and lost a fairly convincing decision. So clearly the weight wasn't the problem then, right? Josh Taylor may very well be done for. The fight in itself was fun though, and it was competitive, don't get me wrong. And we should give credit to Essuman for his performance as well, rather than just use this as a means to say that Josh Taylor is done for. Essuman is on the rise and he's had some good wins already in the past, so people did pick him to win this fight against Taylor, to be fair. For me personally, I wanted Josh Taylor to win this fight. I don't have any Scottish in me, I didn't have any money on the fight, and Josh Taylor's never really been my favourite fighter, but I do like him and I do still want him in the sport. And I knew that he'd pretty much be done for if he did lose. So I wanted him to make a statement win and look good, so there was actually hope for him to do things up at welterweight. Early on in the fight now, I really thought we were going to get that statement win from the Tartan Tornado. Josh was going to the body well and he was beating Essuman up a little bit. Had Essuman backing up in there. I thought he would be able to do him at some point in the first half of the fight. But in hindsight, Essuman was never really hurt and I'm just a casual. I let the Scottish crowd screaming at every shot that Taylor landed for me. And I also think there's this way that Essuman reacts to shots that makes him look way more hurt than he actually is. But yeah, Essuman started to take over as the fight went on, making good investments to the body himself and doing quite a bit of damage on Taylor. Taylor was still in the fight after the early rounds of course, got some decent work in here and there, but from time he didn't get that ideal statement stoppage win in front of his home country crowd early on, which is exactly what he needed against a guy who is currently not world championship level, it was looking peak for Taylor. And he did actually go on to lose, which is why everyone is saying that he's done for now. And even if Taylor did officially get the win on the cards in the cheeky hometown decision or even a draw, thus leaving him with only 2 official L's in his record, people would still be echoing the same sentiments about Josh Taylor's career being finished, I reckon. So I don't fully think that Josh Taylor should fight again after that loss, but whether or not Taylor fights again depends on a certain variable for me. So as for this just one more fight question that I put in the thumbnail, I'll say no. This idea is not very unique for me at all, but probably the best option for Josh Taylor. So yes, Jack Catterall is fighting Harlem Eubank in July, and if Catterall loses to Eubank, thus putting him on a 2-fight losing streak, let's just do Taylor Catterall 3, why not? Taylor and Catterall officially have 1 win apiece in their duology, so why not do the rubber match? I of course say if Catterall loses to Eubank, because if he wins that fight then he'll be looking for a title fight at welterweight, and Catterall is tipped to defeat Harlem Eubank on the odds. He's a 2-5 favourite in this upcoming fight. But he was a 2-5 favourite against Arnold Barboza, and he lost that one. And Harlem Eubank is the hungry up-and-comer in this matchup. I was also incredibly disappointed in Catterall as a result of that Barboza fight. I'm not high on Catterall at all right now. So if he loses to Harlem Eubank and looks bad in that fight, Taylor Catterall 3 is perfect. The perfect last payday for Josh Taylor, and probably Catterall as well. If they did make Taylor vs Catterall 3, the mob of boxing fans who complain about rematches and trilogies when they have no other better matchups to suggest would of course be up in arms, but if both men show that they have no hope to go for gold up at 10 stone 7 anyway, then why not? We'll get another fun build up, and hopefully a good fight like the second one. If Catterall outboxed Josh Taylor again for a decision win in a trilogy fight, I'm not gonna lie, that would be awfully repetitive and predictable, and make the trilogy look like a bad idea in hindsight. But if Josh Taylor pulled off the upset to knock Catterall out and end his career off on a win and sailed off into the sunset, then let's have it right. That would be the perfect career end for Josh Taylor. That would be great for him. And even then, there could still even be another big domestic fight for Josh Taylor after a hypothetical trilogy win over Catterall. Let's say if Conor Benn goes for gold at welterweight against Jaron Boots Ennis and Benn gets demolished in that fight and he's looking cooked. He could step back down to domestic level, but on the more lucrative side of the British scene, and then we can have Josh Taylor vs Conor Benn possibly. But obviously, all of that is fully based on variables, And if Jack Catterall and Conor Benn both go and do their thing at world level, then there's not really any fight worth making for Josh Taylor, is there? Because he's not going to win a world title himself at welterweight, is he? So the point is, Taylor ain't even going to get a world title shot again in all likelihood, and he doesn't need to be getting in there with hungry up-and-comers like Ekow Essuman again, I'll tell you that much. So if there ain't a big cheeky payday available against another big British name, then Josh Taylor should never box again. As for Mr. Essuman, fair play to him for a well-fought win against a former undisputed champion on enemy territory. A great feat indeed. He picked up the WBO Global Welterweight title in that fight. I'm not sure exactly how intrinsic that belt is with a mandatory position, but Essuman is high up in the WBO rankings anyway, so I'd be happy to see him go and fight for the WBO World Welterweight title next up. The current champ is Brian Norman Jr., who does have a defence coming up next month against Sasaki over in Japan, but I do expect Norman to get the win there. I'm all about divisions being unified, but it doesn't really look like Norman Jr. is going to unify next anyway, as I touched on in my rundown of the welterweight division in my last video. So yeah, if Norman does beat Sasaki, and then a unification doesn't get made after the fact, sign me up for Ekow Essuman vs Brian Norman Jr. for the WBO welterweight strap. I know this is obscure, but I would like to see a welterweight world title fight between a Brit and an American. The last time a Brit beat an American in a welterweight world title fight was when Kell Brook defeated Sean Porter back in 2014, over a decade ago now, which was big. Granted, Essuman was born in Botswana, and I do think he did grow up there for a bit when he was a kid, but at the end of the day, he trained and has been trained in the UK under UK trainers. He boxed for Team GB, and all 23 of his pro bouts have been in the UK. Well, his recent fight against Josh Taylor in Scotland was actually his first bout outside of England, and he's the former English and British welterweight champ. So as far as boxing goes, Essuman is British, and I would most certainly be rooting for him against a Brian Norman Jr. I'd make the educated guess that the bookies would have Norman as the favourite, but right now, I couldn't really pick a winner in a hypothetical matchup between Essuman and Norman. But if the fight does get made, then I'll certainly look into it more. And if you do want to check out my rundown of the current title picture in the welterweight division, and a little deep dive into how the titles moved around in that division in the last 2 years, check out my aforementioned video about the welterweight division that will be linked at the top of the description. As for the card as a whole, I'm going to say that this Josh Taylor vs Ekow Essuman card has unexpectedly been the best of the 3 Queensberry on DAZN cards so far. When Queensberry announced their signing with DAZN the other month, they announced all 3 of their first shows at once. The Joyce vs White card, which ended up being Joyce vs Hrgovic, the Kakachi vs Wood card, and the Taylor Essuman card. I really wouldn't have expected the Taylor Essuman card to be the best of the bunch, but it really was, I'll be honest. The main card kicked off with Aloys Jr. versus the Scot David Jamieson, the cruiserweight affair. Not about that I was particularly looking forward to, nor cared who was going to win in all honesty. Nice bit of hill work from Aloys to wear the England top and play up to the Scottish crowd at the weigh-in, but again, I didn't really care, I just wanted to see excitement in the ring. From the start, we could tell this was going to be a standard win for the prospect Aloys Jr. Didn't see Jamieson put in too much of a fight in front of his home crowd unfortunately, but the actual finishing blow from Aloys Jr. in the 3rd round, that was a peach of a left hook that put Jamieson down clean. Love to see it, man. I'll be honest, I do tune into these undercards at the hope of just watching people get brained for the most part. Nothing against Jamieson of course, I'm glad he was alright afterwards and I would have been just as satisfied if it was the other way round, but I just like my KOs on the undercards for the purpose of entertainment, and I'm sure all my other fellow casuals do. Because the undercard of the last Queensberry on DAZN card, Kakachi vs Wood, included Chris Kongo vs Owen Cooper, Liam Davis vs Kurt Walker, and Ezra Taylor vs Troy Jones, and all of those fights went the distance. So to me, the fact alone that we saw this big KO to kick off the main card on the Saturday just gone, made that undercard better than the Kakachi Wood undercard already just one fight in. Bit extreme I know, but that's just my personal preference. Next up was the scheduled 4-round pro debut of the young Scot Reece Lynch, and he got the stoppage win to keep things rolling and keep the crowd happy. Next up after that was the heavyweight bout between Moses Itauma and Mike Balogun, so surely we were going to get another KO here, probably in round 1, because Itauma got the fairly decent Dempsey McKean out of there in the 1st round in his last outing, but nah, Itauma absolutely fell off, man. Didn't even knock Mike Balogun out till round 2. Nah, I'm joking. Standard win there for Itauma, but it was another fun knockout from the young and up and coming heavyweight. He did drop Balogun in the 1st round, but Balogun was game enough to get up and continue and see out the round. In the 2nd round, Itauma dropped Balogun again, flat on his back with a nice right hook. Typically heavyweights don't fall flat on their back unless they're out of it, but shades of Tyson Fury there from Balogun I guess, as he got up and didn't seem too shaken at all. He made the count and then rushed at Itauma after the fact to liven things up a bit. But not long after, Itauma would put him flat on his back with a check right hook again, and it was all over. He didn't put Balogun out cold, and me personally, look, I've exposed myself for my blood loss already, but I would not have instantly waved it off there like the ref did. Because although Balogun got put flat on his back twice and was never going to win the fight, he did show that he could get back up just fine and come back fighting after being knocked flat on his back not long before. But again, that's just me wanting to see a diabolical ending to the fight probably. 2 rounds is nice and concise as well from Itauma. He was calling for the early stoppage on fight week, and we can tell he wanted the stoppage ASAP as he actually ate a shot to land one for the first knockdown in round 2. And then for the final knockdown, he actually made the adjustment to step back as he threw the right hook, so he didn't get caught in the process. I'll be honest though, it's a shame that Itauma couldn't take a step up in class from his last fight, and that he couldn't fight sooner after that win in December. But I don't know, maybe nobody wanted to sign up to fight him, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt in regards to matchmaking and all that. They're actually talking about Itauma versus Martin Bakole next up, and that would be cool. I reckon Itauma brains Bakole, and Itauma does need a big name fight next, which is why I like that matchup for him. As for Bakole in particular though, I would rather see Ajagba get the rematch against him next because Ajagba got robbed in that one. But if it's not an Ajagba rematch next for Bakole, then Itauma versus Bakole, put the fight on. After the Itauma fight, we had the co-main event, the all-Scottish featherweight bout for the WBC silver belt between Nathan Collins and Lee McGregor. A fight in which Nathan Collins got the round 4 stoppage win. And I would call Nathan Collins' performance the performance of the night for sure. He looked the better boxer from the off, slippery and almost impossible to hit, got to work nicely with the counter left hand of all varieties, and Lee McGregor just didn't want to know about Collins' punch power, so he was constantly smothering Collins' work by grabbing him and trying to spoil the party. Punch perfect performance from Collins, apart from the one left hook he got caught with in the second, and he took that shot well by the way. And I of course gave Collins all of the first 3 rounds going into that 4th round in which he closed the show. As for the 4th round, for the first knockdown, Collins caught McGregor clean and got a lot of purchase on a very short left hand as McGregor was desperately trying to smother, and teed off to put down McGregor who was still trying to grab a hold. Knockdown number 2, Collins just rushed McGregor and sunk in a left hook to the body, then came up with a left to the head to drop him. And then for knockdown number 3, Collins backed him up again and dug in another nasty left to the body to crumple Lee McGregor, and the towel came flying in. Lovely finishing sequence there. And that was 4 stoppages out of 4 fights for the main card fights beneath the main event. Collins was buzzing and very confident after his victory in which he became the new WBC silver featherweight champ. Again, I'm not too sure if that actually makes him the mandatory, but the actual WBC champ at featherweight is Stephen Fulton, and I do think that Collins versus Fulton would be a good one. Collins said that he wants to win the WBC belt from Fulton and then unify with the WBA champion Nick Bull. If Collins got by Fulton and became a world champ, to me, that would render Collins the favourite in a bout against Nick Bull. TJ Doheny gave Bull a bit of a tricky time there in Bull's last outing, and Collins would be tricky for Nick Bull as well, but he would actually punish Bull with big shots. I'll get into the featherweight division more in a bit though. So yeah, after Collins vs McGregor, we had the big main event between Taylor and Essuman that we've already touched on, and that was a nice 12 round banger. So a 12 round banger as the main event, and an undercard full of knockouts, that's what I want from a night of fights. That's why I called this card in Scotland the best of the 3 Queensberry of the Zone cards that we've had so far. But the next Queensberry on the Zone card is Fabio Wardley vs Justice Huni on June 7th, a stadium show at Portman Road, in Wardley's hometown of Ipswich of course. Dillian White will fight on the undercard against a yet to be named opponent. It will probably be a can. And as for the rest of the card, I'm not particularly fussed about any of the fights, but I will watch them all. And I wasn't particularly gassed for any of these fights on the Taylor Essuman card either, but I ended up thoroughly enjoying it. So the Wardley Huni card as a whole may deliver too, we'll see. But I do just want to quickly get this out there now. For the main event, smart money is on Wardley by knockout for reasons that I expressed in my latest video, link in the description of course, and the bookies do favour a Wardley knockout. But part of me does envisage Fabio Wardley struggling to find a home with his notorious big explosive power shots, and Huni just boxes him around and outpoints Wardley to upset the Ipswich crowd and get the decision victory. Hedging a big stake on Wardley KO and a smaller stake on Huni points might be the way to go for you degenerates. So earlier in the day there was a featherweight world title fight over in Japan, as Angelo Leo successfully defended his IBF featherweight title against the game Tomoki Kameda. Angelo Leo got the win by majority decision, with the 114 to 114 card of course, and both a 115 to 113 card and a 116 to 112 card in his favour. The different cards did make sense because there were some close rounds. Before I tell you how I had it, can I just say, Pro Box TV are a gift to boxing for giving this world title fight away for free on YouTube. So if any of you missed it, you can go back and watch it in full on their YouTube channel now, and it is worth the watch. The minimum weight world title fight co-main event is worth the watch as well. But as for my scorecard of the fight, I know it may seem wide, but I actually had Angelo Leo winning 117 to 111. First few rounds were cagey, with neither men giving up too much, but I actually gave Leo all 4 of the first 4 rounds. Leo was active with the jab, which made the difference, and he also landed a few to the body, and he timed his entries well to quickly get off of shots against an on-point Kameda, so it was good boxing in there. 5th round there were more engagements on the inside, and Kameda capitalised by landing a few good body shots, so the 5th was the first Kameda round for me. I also just edged the 6th to Kameda as he was getting off to the body well again, which was the difference in that round for me. 7th round was another tight round, but Leo landed 2 eye-catching uppercuts in the round, which was the difference in that one for me. Round 8 and 9 were both fun back and forth rounds with the action picking up. I saw Leo outlanding Kameda in the 8th, so I gave that one to him. Then in the 9th, I saw Kameda getting the better of things as the round went on, and more nice bodywork again, so the 9th went to Kameda for me. We got some nice inside fighting in the 10th, but Leo was doing the better work defensively for me and looked like he got off with more clean shots, so yeah, I gave the 10th to Leo too. So I already had Leo 7-3 up going into the championship rounds, I'll be honest. Some of the rounds were kinda close though. Then I had Leo winning the 11th round as he was the one quickly getting off of shots before the 2 men would tie up on the inside. Then the 12th and final round, a good competitive round as Kameda was walking Leo down and did get through with a couple of nice right hands, but Leo was able to tee off on the pursuing Kameda who came towards him and land more shots, so I did give the 12th and final round to Leo too. So yeah, I only gave Kameda rounds 5, 6 and 9, which may seem harsh, but we score on a round for round basis, so you can win a fight by a fairly wide gap on the cards, having only edged a bunch of the rounds. But either way, Angelo Leo was the rightful winner of course, and it was a great performance from him against a serious looking Tomoki Kameda. Kameda is a decorated former world champ, who's been in 7 world title fights and won 4 of them. There were questions about him being past his best going into this one, but yeah, he looked on point for this fight. So to me, this was a valid world title defense for Angelo Leo on away soil. So as for the 9 stone division as a whole, the champions are Angelo Leo, the IBF champ, Stephen Fulton, the WBC champ, Nick Bull, the WBA champ, and Rafael Espinoza, the WBO champ. I would like to see Nathan Collins get his crack at Stephen Fulton's belt, but other than that, I'm just trying to see unifications, man. I know the undisputed super bantamweight champion Inoue is meant to be coming up to featherweight at some point to just mash up the place. I think a super fight with Nick Bull is on the agenda for him, but Inoue has his WBA mandatory defense against Akhmadaliev to deal with before he moves up. Inoue is probably defending against his mandatory to stay undisputed, so the bantamweight champion Junto Nakatani can come up to challenge him for undisputed gold at super bantam. Of course, Nakatani has a unification coming up in June against Nishida, but as for Nakatani possibly becoming undisputed at bantamweight, forget about it. After beating Nishida, he needs to quickly go up and fight Inoue for undisputed super bantamweight gold before Inoue leaves that division for featherweight. Now that's all a bit complicated, innit? This guy needs to move up to fight that guy before that guy moves up to fight that guy. But the point is, Inoue does probably have a couple more fights down at super bantam. So for now, let's just hope to see at least a couple of these 4 champs at featherweight in a unification soon. Funnily enough, WBC champ Stephen Fulton already has a win over Angelo Leo in a super bantamweight title fight. But if a rematch can be made there, then why not? Angelo Leo vs Espinoza would be cool as well. I'll tell you one thing, quality of opponent wise, Leo is definitely coming off of the way better win than Espinoza is, but I think Leo vs Espinoza is a 50-50 fight. I'd of course like to see Nick Bull against any of them as well, and I'll be honest, any matchup between these 4 champs would probably be around a 50-50 fight. So the featherweight division is looking live, but something that's also looking live right now is Japanese boxing. The other week we had the super flyweight world title fight between Fernando Martinez and Kazuto Ioka in Japan. That was a fun fight. Martinez survived the knockdown to get the win there and keep his belt. Obviously Inoue fought in America earlier in the month, but his fight did save that 3-day weekend of boxing after the Times Square card and the Canelo card disappointed. We just had the Angelo Leo vs Kameda fight on the Saturday that I just spoke about. Then coming up on Wednesday, we have the double header over in Japan with the vacant IBF super featherweight title fight between Sugar Nunes and Rikishi. Of course, that IBF strap that Kakashi vacated, along with the bantamweight world title fight between Takei and Tongdi. Then in June, we've got the big bantamweight world title unification fight between Junto Nakatani and Ryosuke Nishida. And later on in June, we've of course got Brian Norman Jr. going over there to defend his welterweight title. So yeah, I know there's always a lot going on in the way of world title fights in the lower weight classes in Japan, but I would say the Japanese scene is pretty hot right now. Okay, so that was just my little look back at the boxing that took place on Saturday. But going back to Josh Taylor, there's a couple of things I do want to mention about Taylor before I close out. So some might say that Josh Taylor fell off after the split with coach Shane McGuigan, like some other fighters have done in the past. Taylor last fought under the McGuigans in his unification fight victory over Regis Prograis back in 2019, and since the split, Taylor has been trained by Ben Davidson and then Joe McNally. But in an interview right after Taylor's loss to Essuman on Saturday, one Carl Frampton, who was of course formerly trained by Shane McGuigan himself and had a big fallout with the McGuigan father and son duo himself too, completely shut down this idea that fighters fall off after leaving Shane McGuigan, and that the McGuigan camp actually shorten your career as a result of too much sparring. So that's really interesting. Perhaps Josh Taylor had too many sparring wars under the guidance of Shane McGuigan, and that's what's giving him all these miles on the clock. That would make sense because Josh Taylor is looking like a pretty worn out fighter, but he hasn't actually had that many pro bouts. Of course, there's been the injuries and stuff as well. On that note, I've really been meaning to do a deep dive on the Carl Frampton and McGuigan ordeal for months now. But maybe I'll throw some stuff about Josh Taylor's split with the McGuigans in there too when I make that video. That whole topic will definitely be delved into in a future video of mine. And speaking of future videos, I'm currently working on a documentary style video about the career of Manny Pacquiao's brother Bobby Pacquiao. It is going to be a long one and it's taken a lot of work, so it probably won't be my very next upload, as I'll be looking to do a post-fight reaction to the Nunes vs Rikishi fight. So if you're new here, please do subscribe to stay tuned for those upcoming videos of mine. And the other thing I wanted to say about Josh Taylor, who else saw him slapping Sonny Edwards on the head in Lee McGregor's locker room on Saturday night?
G-up, but I'm expecting a really...
But yeah, leave your thoughts in the comments down below, and you have been listening to O.M.E Boxing.